Years ago, I was in Japan packing up after a year of ministry. As I packed, I was trying to figure out what would happen when I returned to Singapore. Would I go straight into long-term missions? Would I return to working as a pharmacist? Would I study online? Would I work in church? Little did I imagine that 3 years later, I would be standing here today with all of you graduating from seminary. And so I left Japan and returned to Singapore at the start of June 2023. Through conversations and prayers with mentors and loved ones, I decided to study at East before going further into missions. So I applied, and a few weeks later, I found myself standing in front of the school along Joo Chiat Road on the very first day of orientation, still quite in shock that I was actually there. My mind raced as I tried to find my way to the chapel, unsure of what lay ahead of me. Recently, Dr. Ng King shared about the first time she met me. Apparently, I was washing a cup for a very long time while she stood there waiting for me to look up so that she could chat with me. I do not remember the exact moment, but I remember being very hesitant and keeping to myself a lot at first. I would come for classes, say a few quick hellos, and then rush off immediately after. But over time, the community here drew me out. My mentoring group gave me a space to slowly warm up. They welcomed me patiently, included me even when I was quiet, and allowed me to learn simply by being around them. Faculty and staff took time to know each of us personally, always checking in on us and telling us that they are praying for us. Schoolmates reached out and offered help as I adapted to life at East. And slowly I found myself spending more and more time in our student lounge, the Agape room. It became a place where we shared meals, worshipped together, talked about all kinds of things, and occasionally tried to study. Sometimes we encouraged each other. Sometimes we just flopped onto the sofa and quietly zoned out beside one another. But as we spent time together, I became aware that many of our schoolmates were carrying things far heavier than assignments or deadlines. Some come from places facing armed conflict, persecution, and difficult ministry situations. Some worry about family, churches, and ministries back home while studying here. I remember one day of prayer when we gathered to pray for the different nations. As friends shared about what was happening in their countries and ministries, many of us found ourselves tearing up as we interceded together. I began to see more of God's heart for the world, and I realized that God was doing much more in all those moments than I understood at the time. One experience that stayed with me was when our class went for dining in the dark together. It was a session where we were guided by visually impaired staff as we had our meal in complete darkness. I remember trying to pass a jug to someone and having to confirm many times whether the other person had received it before I could let go. I remember asking for water and thinking, oh, this fits the description, so I poured it out, but it was orange juice instead. And I realized how much I had to depend on listening carefully, communicating clearly, and working with what I could understand, even without being able to see everything around me. The experience reminded me of what it looks like to trust God on this journey, to listen and respond faithfully without always seeing the full picture. And so when I first came, I had some idea of what I might be learning, like how to engage different cultures, how to study the Bible, how to build spiritual disciplines. We certainly learned all of this. But learning here was not only about what I had intended to take away. Classes showed me that it was not just about what to think, but how to think. How to approach scripture carefully, recognize our own assumptions, wrestle honestly with difficult questions, and build our lives on God's truth while remaining humble and loving. God did not just give us knowledge and skills, but He shaped who we are through the process itself. This is something I have become especially grateful for. Looking back, whatever growth happened in us, in understanding, in character, in love for God and people, truly came through God's grace. He was the one who gave us the strength to do our assignments and gain insight through classes and opportunities to serve. He provided loving mentors and teachers who encouraged us and challenged us. Schoolmates who became close friends. E-staff who quietly served behind the scenes to keep everything going. Families, churches, supporters, and prayer partners who make it possible for us to be here. For many of us, life before East looked very different. All of us came from very different places, ministries, and experiences. Yet God, who knows what we need even before we do, brought each of us here in His time and in His way. I will certainly miss this, serving together, learning about each other's cultures, and sharing life in real and small but real ways. So to the entire East community, thank you so much for the privilege of journeying together and learning from all of you. As this chapter comes to an end, I realized I felt this way before. 3 years ago, I was packing up in Japan, not knowing what would come next, saying goodbye to a place that I had grown to love. And now once again, it's time to move into a new season. My fellow graduates, some of us are returning home and back to our ministries. Some of us are being sent out to serve cross-culturally. Some of us may still be trying to figure out and take the next step. There are uncertainties ahead, adjustments and challenges we cannot fully prepare for. But we go forward with this assurance. The God who has faithfully brought us into and through this season is the same God who goes ahead with us. So let's press on.